Welcome everyone to the Franbi effect. So today I have the pleasure and honor of interviewing one of my great friends, Brandon. I've known this guy for, I want to say 10, 13 years now. We've built a pretty strong friendship. And I mean, he's someone I look up to just because of his success and just his hard work. I say we just go ahead and get started and let's learn about Brandon. So what if I told you that fatherhood changes everything? The way you work, the way you lead, even the way you see success. Today, we're sitting down with a father, entrepreneur, a business owner whose journey will change the way you think about parenting and purpose. From the moment he found out he was going to be a dad to the struggles of balancing work, family, and ambition. This is a raw, honest look at what it really means to show up for your family while chasing your dreams. Get ready because this father's story will change the way you see parenting forever. And welcome because this is the Franbi effect. Brandon, you want to say anything before we get started?
I just want to say thank you. This has been a long time coming. We're both really busy people, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. And I'm just happy to be here, man.
Of course, and no better way to start this podcast with my first guest being one of my best friends, I would say, today. So let's go ahead and let's kick it off with the first question. And it is, what was your first reaction when you found out you were going to be a dad?
Oh, uh, my first reaction was got to get back to work.
Yeah.
That was my first reaction. I found out shortly into starting my business that I was going to be a father. I already was learning that hustle, that grind on how to start a business. I had a lot of failures in the beginning of it. And I knew that now that I had something started with this business, I had a seed that was finally growing. I knew I had to find a bunch of water to start, making that seed grow into something more beautiful. But, as soon as I found out my wife Janice was pregnant, I knew it was a grind time, as much people would say.
I remember you came to me and you're like, hey, man, I'm going to be a dad. What do I do? I'm like, well, I can give you advice, but I'm going to tell you every dad experience is different. But what I can tell you is you'll be all right. You'll figure it out along the way.
Yeah, man.
And so far you've done so good. I mean, you guys just celebrated a young man's birthday, and I heard that was a success. I didn't get pictures of the gift we sent him, so I don't know if you liked it or you guys just threw it away. But we don't have to go into that right now.
There were so many gifts, man. So many gifts. But yeah, it was a great time, man. It was a great time.
Another question I want to ask you is, how has fatherhood changed the way you see work and responsibility? So, being a business man, having your own business, and, it does require you to work a lot of hours. A lot of the times it's unscheduled hours, tending to the client's needs. How has fatherhood changed the way you see work and those responsibilities?
So being a father and now having a son, it's given me a lot more energy than I thought I had. It's kind of like the military when we all went to boot camp and they were making us do a bunch of stuff that we thought was impossible. But towards the end, those drill sergeants were like, look, man, you can actually do this. It's kind of the similar thing there. I was already used to pulling 8 to 14 hour days at the beginning of the business. Finding out I was going to be a father just made those 14-hour days a little bit better, just a little bit more energy.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I can understand that. And I remember, like I said, I've known Brandon for a long time. And I remember one of the things that was always consistent was I'm going to have a business and I want to have kids early.
Yeah.
Surely he succeeded at both. So more power to you, man.
Yeah, man. Yeah, as you know, I think we're both like entrepreneur type people. I remember like shortly after we got out of the military, we were both trying to start these side gigs and like trying to find the one that like really fit. And, what really pushed me even more was, I always wanted to be a father, like I told you. And I always had this vision in my mind of becoming successful, not in ways of money, but like success to me was kind of like being able to have my kid not have to worry about anything and have my wife be able to take care of my kid while I'm out at work, still growing the business, knowing that no matter what, financials are good, food's on the table, and, they can pretty much not buy everything they want, but they never have to worry. Because at the end of the day, like, I'm sure you can contest to this, that's what ultimately makes us as men and providers happy, is seeing the people that depend on us happy and stress-free.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, it's even like when you go to the store and your kid's like, "Hey, can I have that little lollipop?" Not needing to look at the price and saying, "You know what? Like that's, right now." Obviously not every time we go to the store, I'm at the checkout line like, "Yeah, go ahead, grab all the candy you can." But, like being able to say, "Yeah, it's okay. It's not gonna sink us. We don't have to worry about where our next food or whatever's coming from." Because, as a father, I'm able to provide, you're able to provide. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, that brings me a lot of joy, for sure. So, what has been the hardest part about balancing fatherhood and running a business?
The hardest part, well, what used to be the hardest part was when Luca was first born. Just to give you guys a little bit of backstory, my son Luca was born, and as most fathers, or maybe only some, but what most people do is they try their best to take off as much time as possible. And that's what my wife did. She took 3 months off from work, and I wanted to take at least a month off. But, as soon as that third day hit, with the position that the company was in, the company couldn't afford for the owner to be out of the business for that long. So unfortunately, I had to go back to work 3 days after Luke was born, 6 days a week, and I didn't really get to see him that much. Not to get all emotional and stuff like that, but, you know, throughout those first couple weeks of not really getting to see my child, because, I have a company that is our only bread that's coming in. I didn't feel that attachment. I knew that I had a child, to take care of, but I didn't get the luxury to build that attachment quickly. So after a couple of days, I had that kind of like effect of like that feeling of like, okay, I have a child, but, is it weird that I don't feel attached to him? Is it because I don't get to spend as much time with him? Things like that. That was really the hardest part, I think, being away from him, because I kind of had to. It's not like I was working a 9 to 5 job where they would let me leave maybe for 3 months or maybe even for 2 weeks with no pressure of having to think about work. Because as you know, with all your side businesses as well, like it's kind of like once you start something, it's all you kind of think about, because that's, the only way money's really coming in. So me being apart from him because I had to, no matter what, was the hardest. Because at that time, like the company was required. It wasn't like a hobby. It's what it was required to
Right.
keep doing. And us men, like we have to do what's required sometimes, not what we feel like doing.
Yeah, and I remember we had a lot of conversations about that because at first, as your son was getting closer and closer to being born, it's like, man, I'm excited. I get to take some time away from work. I mean, I know this, probably our listeners don't, but you went from working for someone in roofing, realizing, hey, this is the business I want to take and build something out of and leave a legacy for my family. And then, you know, taking that leap of faith that a lot of people would not take because, again, there was no security on the other side. But you said, I'm going to do this, seeing the growth of your business just because you've been able to leverage a lot. I mean, your creativity just shines in your business, and you can tell just by how fast it's been growing. And then some of the stuff you initiated from the start, right? Like you made it, wanted everybody to know how to do social media marketing. You went hard on socials, promoting your business to the point where you did see fast growth. And I mean, when he says, hey, the business couldn't have the CEO out of the office, it wasn't because the business was not producing. It was because the business was producing so much that they just needed someone to oversee everything and just be able to make sure that people were where they needed to be when they needed to be, since you guys kind of lost that when your wife stepped away, because that's another thing, right?
Exactly. Yeah. My wife was working for the company. She was an essential part of the business because she knew everything about it. Because before I even started the business, she would hear all of the, I don't want to say the word complaining, but how when we come home from work, Franbi, like we we like to talk to our wives and confide with them. But when I was working for the other company, I would confide with my wife about the issues from the actual company I'm working for, operational issues, but also sales issues. So as soon as I started, I was like, hey, I need someone to not only answer the phones every second, because there's something called speed to lead. You want to answer that phone as quickly as possible, but she also knew every single step of the sales process for selling a roof. So I thought, who better to answer the phone? So that way she can sell the business before we even sell that person a roof. That way they're already sold. So yeah, I had to go back into the business, not because like we weren't doing well, but because we were growing too fast. Yep. And when we started growing too fast, a lot of the SOPs and the operating procedures that we made started kind of falling off a little bit because we were growing too fast. I always tell people it's kind of like we were running on a treadmill, like really, 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 really fast while you're juggling all these mandatory requirements. But then you start running way too fast and those mandatory requirements start falling off the treadmill, and it's very hard to pick them back up when you're running too fast. So that's pretty much what happened with that.
Yeah. Yeah, and if anybody knows Brandon, you guys know he doesn't like treadmills, so he was there very quick.
I like treadmills, man. I'm a stationary.
There
just
you
move
go.
a little bit, one arm at a time. I've got, man.
Man, I do that. I get out of the gym because I got golfers or tennis elbow. So
there you go.
I'll stick to my treadmill. But moving on, and thanks for elaborating that point. I just wanted to make sure we did elaborate a little bit because, like I said, I mean, this guy, the place he's been able to take his business, I don't want to say I've been stalking, but like it makes me proud to see his success and where his business is headed. And that's why I'm extremely excited to have him as my first guest. I mean, a lot of people probably don't know him, but we'll put him on the map for sure.
Let's do it.
Have you experienced a moment as a father that made you stop and think, wow, this is what it's all about?
Yes. Multiple times, actually about an hour ago. An hour ago, man. Talking about social media before this, like, I'm on social media all the time, 80% for business, but that small 20% just scrolling. And you know how Siri is nowadays. If Siri knows you have a kid, they're going to send you kid reels.
Oh, yeah.
All the time. A lot of the reels that I see like used to be a distraction, but now they kind of like bring me back to the present, which is kind of contradicting a little bit. You get into that, whatever they call it. You continue to
death scroll.
Yeah, the death scroll. The death scroll. But Siri's helped me out a little bit. Siri's been sending me some really cool reels about what it means to be a father.
Right.
To a kid, so much so that the reels that I'm getting are saying like, put down the phone.
Right. Yeah.
Go spend time with your kid. So, just an hour ago, I was playing upstairs with Luca, and he's in the stage of where he's kind of able to walk. He can take six or seven steps, and then he falls down. And, I came home really tired today. There was a lot going on at the office, good and bad things. There's always is as a business owner. It's always the best and the worst day of your life. I always tell people. But I was really stressed out. I was really tired. But seeing him walk and smile, it reminds me of those reels that I see all the time, like just be present. Right. If he smiles, smile back, because I hate it. I hate it when he turns around and looks at me and I'm not looking at him. Yeah. Because I can feel like, it's like the small things for little kids like that, like if they're watching something or they're playing with a toy and he looks back at me and I'm looking at my phone or I'm looking somewhere else, it's not, even though I'm right next to him, he doesn't really feel my presence if I'm not looking at him too.
Yeah.
So it's those little reminders like that. When I see the side of my eye, he'll turn around while he's playing with a toy. And I'm like, you know what? Put the phone away, stop cooking, do whatever I'm doing. Let me just look at him.
Right. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, man, I agree. I mean, I have two of my own. But yeah, no, man, like there's nothing like that's there from your child, right? And I mean, I'm living it. I remember when we used to hang out with our friends and they would just tell us like, hey man, this time's valuable. Like they won't be like this forever. Dude, I've never cried more than when I saw my daughter get on the bus for the first time going to kindergarten. I'm telling you, it felt like there was a hurricane about to hit. That's how much I was just sobbing. I'm like, wow, my little girl's, going to
Yeah.
school. And now she's going to, look up to someone else, not daddy no more. And I'm like, man, that really does wreck you. And I think that's one of the reasons why I wanted to start this, right? Because I just want to have those meaningful conversations with fathers, um, and just relate. Because there's a lot of times where as fathers we internalize a lot. We carry that burden just so we don't have to burden someone else. And if just one person can come into the comments and just say, hey man, like this helped me out, like I feel like would be enough for me. Because I know there's been a lot of times this past year where I've looked around and I said, who do I have? And luckily I do have a good circle of friends that I can just call up and say, hey man, like I'm really going through it. But everybody doesn't have that. And I
Yeah.
think how the way you answered that last question leads into my next question, which is how have you navigated the pressures of being a provider while staying emotionally present for your family? And I think you kind of touched on that, right? Just being present, right? Showing them that, I value you. And how do we as men show people that we value them? Our time,
Yeah.
right? A lot of times we are focused on a few things, right? And it is production, income, and then more production. And a
Yeah.
lot of times we do neglect the people that are right around us that mean the most to us. But I mean, you got anything to add?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I was just going to add, like, you have the production, the income, and then more production. Like the production, I feel as if most successful people, they don't really fall in love with the income. They fall in love with the production,
Correct.
and the production that results in income without even noticing it, it can be quite addicting. Like people like me and you, like I feel like even at the end of work, like work isn't done. What else can I do? What else can I do? Like it's constantly on my mind. Like I never feel like I'm doing enough for the business. But every day it takes for my son to look at me to remind me that it should be production, income, and then family time, family time,
Right.
family
Yeah.
time, family time. Um,
And I agree. But I think something a lot, like at least for me and you, and I'm not trying to use this as an excuse, so please don't take that as this, but I know for at least myself, I started the military at a very young age. I signed up at 17. So I'm saying like I learned how to wipe my butt. I was at a recruiting, place with back in the day, you could get those coupons, like those family meals from Burger King, where it was like 4 Whoppers, 4 medium fries, and like 4 drinks. I showed up to my recruiter's office with that. The guy's looking at me. He asked me, he's like, what job do you want to get? I'm like, I don't know, dude, but I just want to be whore. The guy's like, oh, you want to be whore? I was like, yes, Sergeant, I want to be whore. He's like, okay, got you. I'm gonna make you whore. You won't be eating that though. And I
I
was like, oh,
know.
okay, cool, cool, cool. Granted, when I signed up, I was like a solid 90 pounds, if that. And
Yeah, we had the luxury to do that back then,
yeah.
right?
And then the guy looks at me. He's like, okay, bet. I got your ass back right here. He's like, oh, I'm gonna make you whore. Hey, you want to be a cop? I'm like, that sounds whore. He's like, okay, you're gonna be a cop. Surely enough, I signed
Yeah.
up, became an MP. And then the first day we were there, I don't even think I got all my stuff. I didn't even make my bed the first day. The first day I was there, they line us up in like a little formation. And they say, from this point on, the only thing that matters is your country. And that's it. Everything else, grab it and toss it. So pretty much from that day, when I think at that point I was almost 18, but still 17. I was told, hey, from this day, the only thing that matters is your production. Everything else, just toss it. And I think to an extent, it got put inside of me subconsciously to the point where, like, I'm telling you, every job I've taken ever since I left the military, it's been a job where at some point I'm feeling important. And by important, I mean they give me a phone and they tell me we can call you at any time and you have to pick up. And if I don't do that, like I start shaking. That's how bad it is. Like I start shaking. They don't need me anymore. Oh no. But yeah, man, like I started realizing, and I think it put me in a spiral. It's like, man, dude, like I'm missing these little micro transactions with my kids just
Yeah.
because I am serving this almighty power that is our government. To what extent, right? Like at some point, my kids are going to grow up. Will they even want to talk to dad? Would they want to have a relationship with dad? And it's just like, that's when I realized, like, what am I, like you said earlier, right? What am I planting? And is
Yeah.
the seed even growing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%, man. 100%. Similar stories, really, man. Like I was in the military as well, and then I worked for the as a government contractor as well. Just like you actually got me into it. I think almost every job that you had, I got, or it's another way around. We're talking about Anderson now. Every job I had, I got Anderson, but you got me into the government contracting world, and it was that 24-hour clock, like, like, hey, if we need you, you got to come in.
Yep.
So even after the military, it was like, you got to produce, you got to produce, you got to produce. Although, like, in that environment, it wasn't as like isolated to like where all eyes were on us. We had a team on the watchtower. So there was some leniency. I took advantage of it sometimes because, like, doing the night shift, man, that was hectic. That was hectic and very tiresome. But when I got the job at working for the Pentagon, dude, that was really intimidating, super intimidating. And I was only part of a 3-man team. And, during interviews, you talk yourself up. You have to
Right.
sometimes. I may have
Yeah.
talked myself up a little bit too much. So when I came in there, they're like, all right, start writing the policies, the SOPs, yada, yada, yada. I'm like, oh no. I'm like, what did I get myself into? But people like me and you, like, we like think outside the box.
Right.
I feel like we're doing so many things all the time. So that helped me a lot. But because it helped me a lot, it put me back into these older gentlemen that we're working with, seeing like, okay, here's this young guy. He's eager to produce, or at least it seems as if he is, because he doesn't knock everything out of the park, but he's getting it done quickly. And I quickly felt like I was just a producer again, to the point where, like, as a salary job, like, I was only supposed to be working 8 hours, but just like you said, they were calling me all the time, even after hours, especially once COVID hit. Like, once COVID hit, it doesn't matter if you work 9 to 5, like, you work before 9, you work after 5. But I think that helped me a lot starting the business. But now that I have a kid, it's like, we're just like addicted to the produce. It's like, it's all we've ever known since you were 18.
Right.
It's all I've ever known since I went in the military 21. So I'm 31 now. So it's been a while, man. It's hard to kick that habit of like turn your brain off and just be with the kid and your wife.
It's like a hit of dopamine, pretty much, right? Every
Mhm.
time you're being wanted, it's like, there it goes again, that rush. But I agree, man. It's hard just producing. I mean, I remember when you had that last job you had before you went into business. It was crazy. This guy was producing PowerPoint slides and like Excel spreadsheets before they had AI. So he wasn't getting any help. This guy is like trying to make an Excel spreadsheet do backflips while it's being
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
shown to a 2-star general. I'm like, buddy, good luck with that.
Dude, I've never been so nervous with that job. There was one night where, like, and this is where I learned the good old, we're kind of getting sidetracked a little bit, but this is where I learned the good old term, like, no feedback is good feedback. I had to Google that one time because and Janice, my wife, can contest to this. I remember being in our apartment and I was doing so many things. I wouldn't get any corrections or like criticisms on them, but they was just kind of silence. Like, I would turn in my projects when they were due or before they were due, and there was just kind of silence. And I was like, okay, here's the next project. And I was like, okay, just silence. No good feedback, no bad feedback. But because I was already nervous about the job, I remember one day I was like, am I doing this correctly? Like, no one's like, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to do any of this stuff that they're telling me to do. Somehow I think I'm figuring it out. I'm turning it in. but then there's no feedback. So I remember being one night, I was like, dude, I think I'm going to get fired because like my boss doesn't really talk to me that much. Like I turn in all this stuff, but I later found out that, I built a connection with my boss at that point later on, like a year later. And he was like, hey man, just to let you know, he turned around one time, I was like, you're doing great. Everything you do, you knock out of the park. And I was just like, I can finally breathe.
Yeah.
But it's just an example of them like kind of using me to produce. No feedback. Just keep doing it. But yeah, man, that was hectic.
These next two questions are super easy. You'll breeze by them. So the first one is, what advice would you give to new dads who are also trying to build their businesses?
That's actually a hard one a little bit. What advice would I give to new dads who are also trying to build their businesses? Okay. Well, I got some good advice. I don't know. So look, not my advice doesn't work for everyone. Okay. And I know Janice, my wife's going to see this. If you're trying to start a new business, you have to take the word business out of your vocabulary. You have to treat that business like it's its own baby. That baby is starting at $0 in the bank account, no food in the stomach. And that baby's ready to eat. And you got to treat it like it's a baby, like it's its own entity, separate from you, separate from everything. So here's my advice. And this is what I did to Janice. And I think I told you this one time. I think I've told some other people as well. When I started the business, I had to sit my wife down because I knew that if I didn't have the one person that I count on, and honestly, my best friend, supporting me through everything, like if she doubted anything at all, then the business, that business is going to fail. So I kind of sat her down and I told her, look, this is what I'm going to do. I've never tried to run a full-on roofing company before. And I know my wife as well, like, she never has started a business either. So this is a new environment for everybody. So I sat her down. I was like, look, this is what I'm going to do. This is why. This is what could come from it. This is what could happen if I fail. And because of all that, I need you to be on board 110%.
Yeah.
Like, this is not going to be an easy thing. And the second thing I had to say to her was, this is funny. Like, I was like, not everything's all Instagram. Like, you see people on Instagram with businesses and they're driving their Ferraris, they're taking their wife out to dinner and nice stuff, nice this, nice that. I said, that's probably going to happen like 10 years from now. Hopefully it'll come. Maybe it will. But for the next 10 years, if this keeps on going, you're not going to see me that much. And I just want to let you know that this is what I want to do because I want us to be financially free before the average age of people retire.
Right.
And with that, it's going to come a lot of sacrifice. So I told Janice, look, you're not going to see me that much. We're probably going to get in a lot of fights. You're probably going to wish I was home more, but I'd rather not be home for a couple of years, like not home at all, than having to work a 9 to 5 until I'm 65, and that way, like after 5 years, I could be home all the time. So I had to like get her on board.
Right.
If you're having a kid, obviously you have a significant other. If you're having a kid, you have to get your significant other on board.
Yep.
Because they're not going to, if you tell them that you're going to start a business and that's it, and you go start a business, they don't know what comes with starting a business.
Right.
So when all the bad things start happening, it's going to be a huge surprise. It's kind of like sales. A good way to sell is to set up expectations from the start.
Yep.
You have to get all the objections out of the way.
Yeah.
That way, once you do the sale, if problems arise when something's being built, I've already told that person this could happen. That way, kind of like in the military, you got to cover your ass. So that's what I did with Janice. So my number one advice for anybody is if you're with a significant other and you're raising your kid together, you have to get them on board. They have to be more on board than you are. because on those bad days, when you come home and you're having a bad day as a business owner, they have to know that they have to at least fake that they're not having a bad day.
Correct.
Because if you have those two negative energies, you know, whether it's good or not, the business is going to fail every single time.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, it's almost like that war story that we used to hear when we were kids, right? About this commander took his troops and they were on boats. They had to cross a bridge, and then once every last soldier crossed that bridge, the final command he gave to his troops were burn the bridge. Everybody's looking around. It's like, our boats are over there. How are we going to get back over there? He said, burn the bridge. And then, but the reason he said, a lot of people say the reason he said burn the bridge, it was so that nobody could go back. But I interpret that as saying, hey, everybody that's on this side is 100% with me. And it doesn't matter what happens once we start going forward. You know, everybody is accepting the risk 100%. And I agree with that. If you do have a significant other, or you have people that are important to you, if there's any shadow of doubt, it doesn't matter if you're the next Einstein. It doesn't matter if you're the next Abraham Lincoln. It doesn't matter if you're the next Obama. If there's any seed of doubt coming from the people you care the most, it's like Brandon has already said, you're going to fail. And it's not because the idea wasn't good. It wasn't because it wasn't well executed. It's because at every turn, every time something new had to get done, that doubt was getting bigger and bigger and bigger till it either affected your health, it either affected your mental, or it either affected your relationship. And,
100%.
you know, that's why when you hear that advice, if you get anything from this podcast, is if you're ever trying to start a business, make sure that the person that matters the most to you is 100% aboard. And if they're not, talk to them. Take the adequate steps to get them on board. See eye to eye with you so that your business is not going to be 100% success, but it has a better chance of succeeding 100%. I agree with that.
Man.
Great advice. And then
that's the best advice, really.
Another question I have for you is, if your kid wrote a book about you as a father, what do you hope the title would be?
Man, you're going to make me cry, man. I don't know what it is, but once I think of it, what do I hope the title will be? Nah. This kind of goes with the marketing too. I learned this from marketing. Sometimes the most simplest things are the most powerful. I just want him to write a book and call it Thank You. Just thank you. That's it. I'm not doing this for myself. I'm doing it for my wife, and I'm doing it for my kid. It doesn't need to be a long title. It doesn't need to be so much. And the book doesn't even need to be long. It could just be the title's Thank You, and the next page could just be right in the middle, Thank You.
Yep.
That's all I want, man. Yeah, man, because, you know, I'd be selfish if I wanted more out of him, you know. That's all I want. It's just thank you. Like that. If I hear that at the end of my life, after everything, like, I'm good, bro.
Yeah, I hear you. So, as I know, and as you started to talk about this, so you've had a variety of jobs. Was there a moment when you felt lost or unsure of your path? I think you started alluding to that when you were talking about your last job before you started doing roofing. But
yeah, as you know, man, like, well, you only you know, because we were the only ones, like, out of our friend group or even outside our friend group that were constantly trying to start things. You know, we always failed and stuff like that because, you know, every successful people, like, they always fail the first couple times. But yeah, I doubted myself a lot. You know, like, man, I always really doubted myself when I was growing up, really. You know, I had great parents, but in school, I wasn't the best. I pretty much almost dropped out of high school. I actually had to go spend 2 weeks after graduation of high school to clean up all the classrooms in order for them to allow me to graduate. But when I was a kid, I was bullied a lot. A lot of people are, you know, a lot of people just say, just suck it up. But
Yeah.
I always remember like people calling me stupid, people calling me the R word, stuff like that. Probably just from I got unlucky with a bad class. So when I heard that, like it really affected me. So as I was growing up, going into middle school, going into high school, that's what I thought that I was, because that's what I heard a majority of the time during elementary school and stuff like that. So I always thought I wasn't good enough. So what helped me a lot was the military. That was
Yep.
like the first time that like someone told me like nothing crazy, but like good job. And I was like, oh, okay, like I did something good. And when I got that one job that I was telling you about where there was no feedback, that doubt started coming back again.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm not getting any feedback. Like they're not saying good job. Like I must be doing a horrible job. Oh, I'm stupid. Stuff like that. And then the businesses, when COVID hit, everybody had a lot of time.
Yeah.
So I remember me and you were always trying to start new things, this and that, this and that. And, you know, just like all successful people, we failed a lot of things. So that started doubting me more and more and more and more. It wasn't until I got over like one of my biggest fears, which was one of my biggest fears in life was always like just going up to random people and starting a conversation. When I'm at work, because I'm a salesperson, when I'm at work, I'm able to turn myself into a extrovert, but in reality, I'm an introvert, dude. I'm not a small talker, and that sometimes hurts me in sales. So I compensate that with knowing a lot of knowledge about what I'm selling.
Right.
So they view me as an expert, and that's why they buy it. Um, what I was getting at was when I first started roofing, the only way to get business, because there was so much competition, was to knock doors.
Oh yeah.
And you did it with me for a little bit.
Hey, that was
So
fun.
you know
Hey,
how it was.
hey, I got 2 people and I said I'm out.
Dude, you did good, man. Well, let me tell you something about Franbi. One thing about Franbi is he does not stop. He does not stop. I remember like one of our first door knocks when we were trying to sell a roof. This guy kept on saying, "Nah, I'm good. Nah, I'm good." And Franbi, something about Franbi is he's really good at pulling stuff out of his A. I don't know if we're allowed to curse on here,
You're
but
good. You're good.
he's really good at pulling stuff out of his A, and like he makes it make sense. And I remember being on the roof while hearing him going back and forth with the guy, back and forth. This is why you need a roof, back and forth. That guy said like maybe 10 no's.
He said, I can't do anything because my wife's not here. And then I'm like, and we just moved here. And I'm like, buddy, perfect time to do it. And then he said, no, I can't do it. I can't do it. You spent like what, 2 hours with the lady next to him, his neighbor.
Yeah.
And I'm like, look, he's already getting on her roof. Let him do your roof too.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. You killed that one. I got out. And I think that was a big roof you got too. I was like, oh man, that's a bigger one. But back to what I was saying, man, that when I started getting good at that, I mean, we were both horrible when we first started, but you know, with anything, it comes practice. And when I finally started getting good at it, that's when I like really just started to believe in myself.
Yep.
You know, that's when I really started to believe in myself. And then I started learning the ins and outs of the business. And here I am now. Here I am now.
And that's the thing. It's like realizing that you're going to get a lot of no's along the way, but you just need that one yes. Changes everything. Like you were saying, I mean, we spent that day, if I recall correctly, it was like pretty hot and I was sweating out there. And like we were going door to door. It was a nice neighborhood. You got to that lady, and that part of the story that isn't told is that lady needed a lot of assistance to get her roof repaired. And then I think to an extent to where she had an insurance company that was not a favorable insurance company. But you stuck through it to help that lady get what she deserved from her insurance company and the roof and the security in her house that no matter how long she lives, she's going to be good in there. And I remember you were getting calls at 6. You're like, it's so-and-so. Let me answer the call, see what I can help her with. And I planted the seed on her neighbor, but it's just probably those countless visits that nobody saw you doing to her house, them seeing how intentional you were about it, that got them to say, well, that is the person we want. That if we ever need to change our roof, is the person that does it. And it just happened, it coincided while you did her roof, you were able to do theirs. And yeah, man, that, like you were talking about it, we started so many businesses together, but outside of your wife and your family, I don't think there was someone more excited for you to actually see what was coming from your business when you launched than me. Because, I mean, we were in the trenches together for a long time. I can't even count on one hand how many businesses we started together. But if I can add, it's like, it's not that those businesses weren't the right business or those businesses were not good businesses. It was just, we decided for whatever reason, we just didn't want to be intentional about it.
Yeah.
And when you put intentionality behind believing in yourself, I mean, look at yourself now. I mean, everybody that knocks door wants to work for your company, Home Source Roofing. I mean, I believe in it so much that my neighbors needed a roof. I'm like, say less. I got you. I called them up. Hey, buddy. Hey, they need a roof. Get them. And if anybody's watching this podcast and you think you're an extrovert, go knock on doors. I guarantee you will be an extrovert instantly. It's like, nah, I'm good. Because it's just being that vulnerable to people. It really does take a special breed to do it. I mean, we'll be honest.
It does, man. It does, man. I belong to a lot of roofing Facebook groups now. And I always remember this one Facebook post, and it was like a failure post. And it was a guy saying, it was a long thing, but just to make it short, he said that he was a combat veteran. He has multiple medals. He's seen the worst things any human can see. He had a lot of fears with that. Came back to the United States, and I'm not comparing this at all, but it just kind of shows you how scary it could be to knock doors and try and sell like a $20,000 roof just after visiting someone for the first time. He said that knocking on doors was one of the hardest things he's ever done, like one of the scariest things.
100%.
So it does take a special breed, man. You got to believe in yourself. And we did when we first went out. We just said, man, let's just do it, man. It's hot, but let's do it, man. We'll go get some pupusas afterwards.
Though, like those Mormons, those kids that be coming to your house trying to talk to you about Jesus, bro, they got cojones. I'm not even going to lie to you, bro.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. They're the ones selling all the pest control. So if you guys have pest control, they're going to sell you a little bit of pest control, a little bit of the Mormon, whatever it is, the Bible. It's not
the Mormon juice, huh?
Yeah, the Mormon juice.
So when did you realize that starting your own business was the right move for you?
Starting my own business was the right move for me. When, like the roofing business or just any business?
I mean, I would say the roofing business, because that's probably been your most successful one, right?
Yeah. I knew it was the right move for me when, I mean, hopefully this guy doesn't see it, but it doesn't matter. My old boss, or the old owner of the company, he was an entrepreneur at heart, but his passion wasn't in roofing. It was in something else. So when I joined that business, he quickly found out that I had a passion for helping people get the roof that they deserve. So he utilized that passion, kind of like he saw that producer in me, just like, me and you. Right. But I loved it though. I loved being a producer because I wasn't just a producer for him. I was a producer for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people, helping people. But he saw that producer in me, and he had another passion, which all props to him. He's still pursuing it. So he allowed me to learn everything about the business, like everything, like how to pay the bills on time, what type of bills there are, cash flow, what is cash flow, what's ROI, what's a gross margin, what's a net margin, what's your red line, stuff like that. So it accelerated my learning of a business. At the same time, I became an expert at selling roofs, which is a separate thing, because you can be a business person and you can be really good at selling roofs. Two separate things. But he allowed me to learn everything within like 12 months of time. And the reason why I learned it so fast, because I was passionate about it. So once I learned everything, I was like, okay, I know how to do everything. So I told my brother, who also worked for the business, hey man, let's do this thing. So I knew that I was able to, I wanted to start my own business once I learned everything, but it derived from the passion of the industry. Do have, this is so like, I forget the word, like everyone says it. Every
Yeah.
podcast you see, everyone says you have to be passionate about something. And then you're probably looking at this video right now to the audience saying like, well, I don't know what I'm passionate about. I didn't know either. Like the other businesses we were starting together, we probably just weren't like passionate about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? But
Chasing the wrong thing for sure.
chasing the wrong thing.
Yeah.
I knew I wanted to start the business once I found out that I was passionate about it, and I ended up learning everything. And that's what really accelerated the start of the business. Was I was like, okay, I'm not learning this. I already know what to do. We just got to get all the puzzle pieces, put them all together really quick, and then start making processes and procedures, and let's just let this thing run.
Correct. Yep. Great answer. And it leads to this one also is, do you see roofing as your final destination? Crazy movie, by the way. Or do you have bigger plans ahead?
There's a new Final Destination coming out. By the way,
Is
I
there?
saw
Are
that.
we going to go watch it? We should go watch it, bro.
Let's go watch it, bro.
I'll watch it with you, but I will have my eyes closed the whole time.
Do I see roofing being my final destination?
Or do you have bigger plans?
I have some side quests.
Right. We going Elden Rings on these people now too, huh?
We're going night rain. That new Elden Ring, the night rain. Can't wait for that to come out. We still play video games, by the way, man. We're still video gamers. Yeah. So ultimately, the main thing is to stick with roofing.
Right.
But pretty much anything in home improvement.
Yeah.
Reason being, it's kind of like recession proof. You know, a roof isn't a want, it's a need. So people are always going to need roofs, even after major storms. Even if there is a recession, there are going to be third-party companies that would open up a financing way so that it can make it more affordable for people to get roofs, because again, it's not a want, it's a need. So finding that nice niche of a high ticket dollar amount sell that isn't a want, kind of like a car, that's a want, but it's a need. So I think I'm going to stick. That's going to be the final thing. My side quest is to start a little bit of real estate. That's something that I've been looking into. I want to try out that good old Burr method. You know, started slow, keep it going.
Buy, refurbish, refinance, repeat. Hey,
exactly. There you go.
Hey, we're taking steps.
I don't know that, man. I'm a roofer, so I don't know all that. I'm just a roofer, but I heard of that method on YouTube and I've been studying on it. I have a realtor right now that's helping me find some rental properties. So that's kind of like my side quest. But ultimately, my main thing, roofing, man, because I love helping people and it's recession proof.
And you kind of alluded to this before, but I have to ask, the people want to know, if you could go back and talk to yourself 10 years ago, what would you say? So 21, probably not sign that contract.
So I have two things. Because people always ask me like, well, whenever I'm hiring people.
Right.
And they're like, well, how much money can you make? I don't tell them because it all depends on the person.
Yeah.
But I say, look, how about this? I would have skipped the first 10 years of my life if I knew how much money you can make in roofing. That's what I tell people. Now, what would I tell myself 10 years from now? I would tell myself something that would kind of like accelerate where I am now.
Right.
Because a lot of what was holding me back for a long time was thinking that I wasn't good enough.
Yep.
So if I could go back, if I can go back and tell myself 10 years ago, I would just look at myself and say like, look, man, you are good enough. Like ignore everything, ignore everyone. You are good enough. Just keep going. Doesn't matter how many times you fail. You're good enough. And you got to believe in yourself. They say like the best salespeople have a catching belief in themselves. They shine with conviction. If you're not confident in yourself, no one will be able to trust you in what you're selling. You have to believe in yourself. If you don't believe in yourself and you don't believe in the product that you're selling, you're not going to do very well.
Right.
But it starts with believing yourself and thinking that you're good enough to actually learn the product and sell the product and help people solve their issues. So that's what I would tell myself.
There you go. So for all you people out there that want to start a business, we're not telling you you're going to succeed, but you heard it here first. Brandon said, start with believing in yourself. Second, talk to your significant other if you have one.
Yep.
Make sure they're on board. So get all that doubt away from there. And then third, pursue that dream, right? So if this show wasn't good enough, there you go. 3 points you can take and go to the bank with. But this is probably my favorite part of this interview. You and I last week were talking a little bit when I messaged you to get you on this podcast. And it was about a book that we both have read at some point in time in our lives. The book is How to Win Friends and Influence People. And I think, as a successful roofer, business owner that you are, I felt like we should end this podcast, and it would only make sense for us to end this podcast with a couple questions from that book. And then maybe you can, provide some insight to our listeners. So for the first question we have here is, Dale Carnegie talks about the power of a smile. How important do you think friendliness is in business and fatherhood?
It's everything. Going back to, your son or daughter looking back at you, smiling. That's the only way. That's kind of like the first thing that humans can connect with and like talk to each other, sort of say, without actually having to actually talk. It's your smile is everything. It sets the first impression. People overlook that a lot. In interviews even, they tell you smile more.
They do.
If you go work at any restaurant or anything like that, the boss is the number one advice. But hey, just smile. If you want to get more tips, smile more. If you want to make people happier, smile more. If you want people to buy, you got to know what you're selling, but smile more. Because people buy off of emotions. Yeah. And if you're not bringing that happy emotion out of them, that in anything, it doesn't have to be when you're selling something.
Right.
Smiling is huge because that's the first impression there.
And then probably one of my favorite parts from the book relates to this question. And it's the book emphasizes making the other person feel important. How do you apply this with your customers and workers? And for me, I think that's what pretty much let me know, hey, I'm on the right track on reading a really good book. Because a lot of the times when I am focused on producing and, just getting the result, I don't care about how the other person feels. I'm like, hey, I'm being weighed down right now. So you either pick it up or get off, or I'll help you off, right? But realizing like, no, man, like the way you get people, and he did talk about a lot of stories, right? Where the boss would change his approach with his employees to the point where he would make them feel important. So they might have not been fully bought into the mission or what it is that they were doing, but just seeing that energy and just how the boss was recognizing them, their work, whatever they were doing, it just changed their approach.
100%, man. And the type of thing that I sell to customers, of course, you got to make them feel important, but it kind of contradicts itself a little bit. But I'll go into how I make people feel important, and that's mostly my employees. But with customers, the last thing they want to do is buy a roof. No one's really saving up for it. So a good tactic for buying a roof or when you're selling a roof, is not really make them feel important, but make sure they're constantly visualizing. Kind of sounds bad, but this is how people are taught to do it. Visualize the pain that they have. Roof is leaking. Remind them constantly that the roof is leaking. Remind them of the repercussions of what could happen when the roof is leaking. Stuff like that. So customers, our goal is just to remind them of what the problem is, what the issue is, and how we're going to resolve it. Now, when we talk about making people feel important, it's not just roofing company. It's for any company or any industry or anything in life. My employees, I constantly praise them.
Oh, yeah.
Constantly, even down to the smallest things. Like when we have sales meetings or we have training, I always started off with the smallest things that someone did last week. For example, one of my employees, Brandy, and I'll tell you other things that I do to her as well, because she's new. before we start the meeting, I say, hey, Brandy was successfully did the speed to lead. She got this. She got the inspection set within 30 seconds. Let's all give her a round of applause. Boom, 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 boom. Okay, so that's like a small thing that she did. In fact, that's what she's expected to do. You know, that's what we
Right.
pay her to do.
Yep.
But you got to make her know that she's doing it right. You got to constantly praise people because when they feel important, they feel more motivated.
Oh yeah, 100%.
I send out a text message every single morning to our group chat, our work group chat, and I will list out every single person's name and tell them how grateful, not how I'm grateful, but how the inside sales team, the administration team is grateful of the work that they did last week because it made them do their job better. So I always try to send out text messages like that so that when they first wake up in the morning, as soon as they start work, they get a text from their boss saying, great job, so-and-so, great job, so-and-so, great job, so-and-so. That way it sets up the day perfectly because people want to feel important. That's their number one desire.
100%. Yep. So Carnegie talks about the importance of seeing things from the other person's perspective. How has this helped you as a leader? And I mean, we don't really have to touch on this one because you kind of touched on that, right? Every morning, waking up, you know, before your employees even hit the office, they already have a text saying, hey, you're being recognized for this. You're being recognized for this. So, you know, you're taking those steps to let them know. When you're doing a meeting with the team, you have a new employee, you know, you don't have to go above and beyond. You're the CEO, right? But you make it your mission to go above and beyond and let this new employee, like, yes, I have so much success going on over here, but I want to stop and recognize you because the business couldn't be where it's at if it wasn't for you, even the little stuff you're doing today. And I think that is evident. I could sit here and talk about the times I've been to his office and I've seen there's multiple employees that'll be outside working, talking to customers, closing deals. And you'll see Brandon's like, go home, we'll do this and that. And they're like, no, man, like we're having fun. We're enjoying this. And
Yeah.
you just be ready to sign those checks when the time comes. And, you know,
Yeah.
it's just, that's just the type of environment that you've been able to foster with your employees. And, you know, a lot of times we're taught, man, the CEO has to be a CEO. You got to be a hard, you know, rod. You can't even show any type of emotion. This book contradicts that. You know, it says encourage, you know, don't criticize. Don't just be ready to say, you failed. You suck. You never make it as a good businessman. That's why I'm the CEO. No, tell them, like, what can we do? How can we work? What do I need to do to make your job easier? And I think you do a really good job at that. And I mean, again, don't take my word for it. But if you're in the Maryland, PA, Virginia area and you need a new roof, Home Source. I wouldn't look anywhere else. I'm telling you. Love them guys. So again,
Thank you,
right?
man.
The book discourages criticism. And don't worry, I will be providing his business information in the description of this podcast once it goes live on YouTube. So if you're watching it on any of the other platforms, just go over to YouTube, pull up the description, and you'll see Home Source and how to get a hold of them. So the book discourages criticism and instead encourages encouragement. How do you implement this at home and at work?
Encouragement. It really just comes back around to like praising your employees. I don't know if this is like a sense of encouragement, but this is something that I do to, I always try to make people feel, hold on, so let's pause for a second. I think it's like lagging out. Is it lagging out at all?
Oh, you're good if it lags. Because it's also saving
Okay,
it to
cool.
your computer. So you're good.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, cool. And then we'll restart. Oh, what was I going to say? Hold up. I was going to
So how do you provide
say,
encouragement at work and at home?
okay, at work, just by simple text messages early in the morning showing, and I like to do it early, although like I hope they're not looking at their phone and feel as if I'm bothering them. But I like to do it early because I'm very intentional in what I do. So when I do it early, I hope at least that they are thinking that, wow, he texted us that early. That must have been the first thing that he thought of when he woke up. You know, I'm
Right.
always thinking about those small things. So that subconsciously, if they're thinking that, they know that, okay, this guy actually cares. He's
Right.
not like just showing up to the office and like, hi, bye, going into my office. As soon as he wakes up, maybe he changes the diapers and stuff like that. But as soon as he sits down and gets a little relaxing time, the first thing he does is praise his employees. That's what I try
Right.
to do. Another thing that I do for my
Great.
employees, and I'll get into home, is whenever I hire someone, I like to tell them my backstory of where I came from another roofing company. I ended up learning everything that I needed to know, and I started a new company. So I always tell them, like, look, man, when you're working for me, because we're growing so fast and we're so brand new, it's going to be inevitable that you're probably going to learn everything about the business too. And in the event that you start making really good money and you learn everything about the business, I don't want you to ever feel as if that you can't come and tell me that you want to start your own roofing business, because that's exactly how I started mine. And there's no way I'll be
Right.
able to ever stop you from following your dream or your passion. Because if you get really good at this, you're gonna love it.
Oh,
You're
yeah.
gonna love helping people. So that's a little encouragement that I do. It's a little like, persuasive so that they can know I'm a good leader and hopefully stay with me forever. But I can't ever stop people from
Yeah.
leaving.
No, for sure.
Now
100%. Yeah.
at home, man, like just 2 hours ago now, like right before I put Luca to bed, and that's why I was a little bit late, I decided to put him in bed instead of Janice. Um, I just looked at Janice. I said, Janice, I kind of said it in a friendly way because I say this every night. I said, Janice, you are a tank. Like, you're able to handle everything. You told me that you cleaned up all the toys 3 times a day when you could have just left all the toys sporadic for me when I got home. So it creates chaos in my mind. But instead, you cleaned up twice during the day and you cleaned up 1/3 time right before I got home. You made dinner. Somehow you don't seem exhausted. I don't know if you're faking it or not, but like, just thank you for like smiling and keeping a positive attitude when I come home from like a 12-hour day.
Right.
And like, it's just saying thank you, man, because a lot of people
Yeah.
just forget to say thank you.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of people always say, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. And people get used to it. But like, a lot of people just don't say thank you a lot, like intentionally, like
Right.
actually turn around from what you're doing and look at your significant other and say, look, like, I'm being serious. Like, thank you
Yep.
for everything you do, and make that dramatic pause with it. Thank
Oh,
you.
yeah. Oh, no,
You
for
know,
sure. Well, that
those
was
pauses
great.
work.
I mean, I'm probably going to look at my wife tonight and tell her, babe, you're a tank. Don't kill me,
Yeah.
though. Brandon said
It's
it.
hard. But I didn't mean it like that. I was like, you can take on any.
Yeah. Um, Put a bow on this wonderful podcast. If you could recommend one principle from the book to a young entrepreneur, what would it be and why?
Let me think for a second. My advice would be appreciate the people that help you along the way. Always show appreciation, because that appreciation will lead into people believing in you. And the more people that you have believing in you throughout the struggling path of entrepreneur, the easier it gets. Because when you fall down and you're able to confide in those people that you appreciate for helping you along the way, they're going to be more intentional and want to support you more and more
Oh,
and
yeah.
more and more. Again, it's sometimes simple is the most powerful. Just the word appreciate. Don't forget to show your appreciation towards people, because the entrepreneurship can be quite lonely. So the people that you're passing by along the path, show them some sort of token of appreciation and it'll come back tenfold.
Yep. I agree 100%. My friend, Brandon, thank you so much for being my first guest on this new journey. I could not ever imagined or envisioned my first episode just to have this wonderful of a conversation. That is what the Franbi effect is all about. Just having conversation with other men, fathers that, might be in business, but are still trying to, or might be just trying to figure it out. Is there any parting words you just want to leave to anybody that might be listening to this podcast?
Just don't give up, man. You only live once. A lot of people are stuck in the present. think about the future, think about where you want to be 10 years, 50 years from now, 60 years from now, because that's what's going to motivate you to get back up every single time that you fail. Don't be stuck in the present. You cannot be stuck in the present. You have to think about the future at all times, because the goals are in the future, not right now. So you can't forget about
Correct.
that. Just don't ever give up, man.
Yeah. And if I could give the listener one more thing just to end this podcast, is one of the most powerful lessons in how to win friends and influence people is this. The deepest principle in human nature is the craving to be appreciated. And we can go back on this episode to where Brandon just reiterated that human nature is the craving to be appreciated. So I challenge you this week, I challenge you to go out and sincerely appreciate someone, whether it's your child, your spouse, or even a stranger. Let us know how it goes in the comments or tag us on social media using hashtag the Franbi effect. Another thing I ask is if you love this conversation, subscribe to the Franbi effect on YouTube, follow on Spotify or Apple Podcasts for more inspiring stories on fatherhood and finding your purpose. Don't forget to leave a review. It helps more people find these powerful conversations. Again, have a great night. And this is the first episode of The Franbi Effect.
Perfect.